Yeah, so the front and rear bumpers done. I don't know if you can see, but these metal plates on the underside, they curve, so back was a little bit more tricky to do in some ways. And then so it's, as I said, it's 1x2 aluminum channel, and then the carbon fiber skin, plastic end caps, and then foam filled. So they're quite stiff actually. So front and rear, I showed you the front already, but it's on and foam filled now and all that, which is good. And then obviously the hatch got done, and this is the carbon hatch. And in many videos ago, I showed how I shaped and gapped all this and got it ready to roll. And but I had a real bitch of a time getting the glass in here though, because or the lexan, because there's some dimensional differences between the steel and the carbon hatch, and it's also much more delicate. You can't put as much force on it. So I had to take this and trim it about 1/4 inch on each dimension to get it to fit in. And in fact, I'm a little shy in this corner over here, and the way I solved that, peel back the rubber and put just a tiny amount of additional filler lexan in there, just pushing this back out a bit more. But so all this stuff worked, and the nice bonus on all this is I used the old piston that was essentially worn out. And what's good about that is that this only weighs, you know, the whole thing with the glass and everything is 10 pounds versus 30 or something. So what's good about that is it's very light on the extremities of the car, just like the bumpers, saving weight. It helps with the rotational inertia of the vehicle and how quickly it responds to turn in and stuff. So this is a shot, but it's still got more than enough poop to not only hold it up, but push it up. One of the other things that's weird about this is that because it's not made out of steel, it's not as rigid, it flexes more, and I've had to set the latch in a little bit and put it under more pressure so that maybe it's under more pressure than normal here, but then there's still some pressure at the corners to keep a seal. Yeah, the seal worked out well, bringing the rear upholstery to a close. I ended up putting a little bit of cement to hold these flaps on both sides. So everything's permanently mounted back here now. And then the last thing before I talk about the mirrors is the windows. So I have the side Motorsport Lexan windows. You know, actually I made a bit of a mistake. I got a little bit excited, and I trimmed these a little bit to make them a little easier to put in, which is fine, but I think this corner here, I'd like to see it push out a bit more, and maybe the next time I do these windows, and I'm going to tell you why, I ended up scratching them, putting them in, that you can't see the scratches, but I know where the scratches are, and dropped them a couple times. And so I'm going to order new Margard material, 3/16, 4.5 millimeter material, and I'm going to extend this out about 1/4 of an inch more, which will push this rubber so that it doesn't sort of curve in the corner. And on the other side, which is completely screwed, and I think it's a combination of a few things. One, when I just put the rubber around the window itself, it always pinched in the corner, so this may have been slightly misshapen on this side. The rubber surround, same thing here, a little bit of a bulge. Now, again, I've got the sunken, even slightly worse here, sunken corner here, and I've got a sunken corner here. So and even this one is slightly sunken. So, you know, the car's not entirely perfect. So in terms of dimensionally, maybe there's a difference side to side, maybe there's a difference between the panels, but I'm going to use each of these panels as templates, and then I'll cut 2 new ones and make sure that they're tight in the corners and they press the rubber out fully in the corners. Now on the mirrors, so originally this mirror on this side was so badly oxidized. They're cast aluminum. I'll show you them in a sec, GTI mirrors. And they just oxidize like crazy in that white aluminum oxide powder, and they won't turn anymore, and there's a bunch of usually terrible things that happen functionally. So one of the things is I couldn't rotate the mirror, and so I actually had to drill this mirror off the frame by drilling out the screws and then re-welding it and re-tapping them. So these have had to drill and tap these today, so I've got some stainless hardware that will hold the mirror on this side. Oh yeah, I'm going to put the seals in the doors again, but I had some trouble with the seals. The door here, so I've got the door latches on now as well, and funny story, I actually had the little flipper mechanism. I took the cylinders out and I'm trying to get everything so it all works in the same key again, and so I'll talk about that in a minute. But basically I had the little flippers reversed side to side, so the thing would unlock but not lock, and finally took all the doors apart again. But to make this work so that the new pins on the door would line up with this, I actually had to space this out 50 thou on steel spacers and just move it out 50 thou. The other side was fine. The other thing that's weird is, so, and I think partly for spacing it out is because I did pull the door forward a little bit by getting it level and positioning the gaps. So on the other side, the pin has to be pretty much all the way out, and on this side the pin, and in the middle height wise, and on this side had to be in the top and furthest in, so the exact opposite. So it shows you the play that's in these things is there for a reason. You actually have to imagine that these things are not super highly accurately made in the factory, and so you need all these tolerances to put them together and gap them correctly. So anyway, this works nicely now, and all my gaps and all of my distances and stuff are nice. So the rubber door surrounds that go around the edge, this material here, reading on the internet, what happens is if you mount it in the stock locations with the little clips, plastic clips in the back here, it's often a little bit too far forward, and then it tries to pinch up against this ridge here. And if the rubber, when it comes out too far, the door won't close. There's not enough room to compress it. So the trick is to use adhesive. I use that impact adhesive, and I'm going to just glue it rather than mounting it where these clips are. You can hear the clips in the background, the noise. What I'm going to do is I will literally glue it to the door frame, and in like back at least 1/8 of an inch away from that seam edge, just so that the doors aren't under too much pressure when you try to close them. Okay, so over to the mirrors. So look at this, I'm so happy. Close the doors. Mirrors. I think this is from an 84, and this is my original 83. They're slightly different. The meatiness of this unit versus the other one is slightly different units, and on this one, the old 83, it had a little bit of cable slack, so I've just wrapped some bronze wire around it and tightened it up to take up the slack. There is a spring in there, but these springs already traveled their full distance with the cable stretch over the years. And the other thing is so these mirrors, what I did a long time ago is I've filled and sanded them to get them and then I shot them in the black epoxy. Still, the bases on each of these are slightly loose, so the mirror would wobble. And it's not the spring getting loose inside; it's actually a different part of the hinge that it gets loose. And on one of my mirrors, the gap is above where it flares out, and the other mirror, the gap is below. So each mirror is a bit weird, different. But what I'm going to be doing is, once the mirrors are mounted, because they turn nicely now, all of this oxidization, I've cleaned off them. I've used acid, and I've used PV Blaster and a bunch of things to get these things freed up. And I still have to finish dressing and painting and using plastic paint on these things here. But on these, what I'm going to do is, once they're mounted, I'm actually going to hide some rubber blocks fore and aft on these mirrors at the hinge, just to make sure they're absolutely rigid and stable to the body of the vehicle. So there we go. And the mirrors is good and solid with the 1/8-inch rubber sheet. I made a gasket. I need to trim it a bit, but basically you can move the mirror, but the only thing that's really moving is the panel is flexing, so that the mirror itself is good and solid. And did that on both sides, and I won't fiddle with it anymore until I actually mount the actual lexan glass panels and all that kind of stuff, and do some final adjustment. By the way, I went through 4 different adhesives and a bunch of strategies to finally get that mirror to stick to the Margard. So the lexan Margard surface is, nothing sticks to it basically. So it turns out Loctite plastic epoxy bonds the metal to it. After I used 180 grit, so I really sanded the patch aggressively, breaking through the Margard layer, and then it seems to be solid now, so I'll cross my fingers that it doesn't rip off.